I am Anthony Moseley, Collaboration's Artistic Director.
And I'm Dr. Marcus Robinson, Collaboration's Executive Director.
Here we go. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 6, our 16th episode of Crucial Connections. Collaboration's hyper-local, thinking global online space, exploring our intersectionality to dismantle oppression and lift each other up. And that's what we're going to do tonight.
Yes, and Zoom guests can join us here live. Hello, everybody, and share their thoughts and questions by signing up for a ticket in advance, while others can watch the live stream on Facebook and YouTube Live. And you can subscribe to our Together Network for only $5 per month.
And this program on Collaboration's Together Network is made possible by the support from our sponsors, AV Chicago, the Mark and Jeannie Malnati Family Foundation, the Joseph and Bessie Feinberg Foundation, and people like you who can make a one-time donation at collaboration.org. We know a lot of you have, and we are so grateful for everybody lifting us up as we continue to make content and bring people together through this pandemic. And we do have a monthly contributor option that you can do. And tonight, actually, we won't be live streaming because this is a very special edition of Crucial Connections, and it's going to be launching a very special new initiative.
Excellent. So tonight's show, this very special show, will launch Collaboration's Call Time Project, a new PSA campaign advocating for mental wellness support for Chicago theater workers while our theaters remain shuttered. This new partnership between Collaboration, the National Alliance of Mental Health Chicago, also known as NAMI, and the League of Chicago Theaters and Season of Concern. It's a vitally important new awareness campaign designed to cultivate and share mental wellness resources with Chicago theater workers while destigmatizing mental illness.
And now we will premiere our first Call Time video featuring Robert Cornelius, Lance Baker, Catherine Miller, Lavina Jadwani, Deb Clapp, and edited by Alex Grosh, sound design by Sarah Espinoza, motion graphics by Galina Shevchenko, and we have to give James Anthony a shout out for the wonderful graphic designs that have been used. So we're going to play that video, and then we're going to have a crucial conversation about the Call Time Project with our partners.
It's call time for theater workers who need support with mental wellness.
Half hour.
Thank you, half hour.
15 to places.
Thank you, 15.
5
Thank you, 5.
places.
Thank you, places. Hi, I'm calling about a friend who might be suffering from depression. I heard you had virtual support groups.
Hi, I'm calling to learn more about the financial support for therapy sessions. I've been thinking about starting therapy.
Hey, friend. I've been thinking about you. How you doing?
These are difficult times. Theater workers are feeling the effects of losing their livelihood, effects like depression, anxiety, and mental illness. Join Call Time. Pick up the phone and call someone you care about. Or call the National Alliance on Mental Illness Chicago's free and confidential helpline, 833-626-4244. You'll find a listening ear and connections to mental health and community resources for yourself, advice on how to support friends or family, and the new NAMI Chicago virtual support group. And Season of Concern can help cover the costs of therapy sessions for Chicago theater artists through its Biscotto Miller Fund. Share these call time resources to aid theater workers and destigmatize depression, anxiety, and mental illness.
All right, all right. How about that? Wow. So joining us tonight here on the special edition of Crucial Connections to launch this campaign is Deb Clapp, Executive Director of the League of Chicago Theaters, Steve Scott, Chicago Theater Hall of Famer and Season of Concern Board of Director, and Dr. Kristina Peterson of Roosevelt University, and Rachel Bhagwat of NAMI Chicago. Please bring our guests up on to the screen with us tonight. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. It is call time. Thank you so much for partnering with us on this important campaign and joining us tonight on Crucial Connections. Our stages have been closed for 10 months. For many of us, our livelihood and lives have been in a free fall, and our mental wellness has been severely compromised. The Call Time Project is specifically promoting 4 simple actions. Call a friend who you think might need to hear from you. Call the NAMI Helpline. Join a NAMI virtual support group. And 4, apply for financial support for therapy from the Piscataway Miller Fund at Season of Concern. We are so honored to be with you all rolling out this program. Let's go around the Zoo room and hear from our guests on their reflections of this moment for theater workers in Chicago and across the country, a little bit about your wonderful organizations and your involvement in this Call Time Project. And then Dr. Kristina Peterson, I hope you could talk about the importance of connections with one another and calling one another and reaching out and destigmatizing mental illness. Rachel, why don't you go first? We'd love to have you open up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Bogwood. I'm the Director of Growth and Engagement at NAMI Chicago. I'm so excited to be here tonight and kind of be part of this Call Time initiative. So NAMI Chicago is the Chicago affiliate of a national organization, National Alliance on Mental Illness. And we are a nonprofit that works to advocate, educate, and support around mental health and mental wellness in Chicago and across Illinois. It's been an incredibly remarkable year in all of our worlds, but certainly in the mental health world. I think, by 2 weeks into the pandemic in the spring, calls to our free and confidential helpline had spiked almost 3 times the volume that we saw before the pandemic. And we saw people who were isolated, who were disconnected from the resources and the routines and supports that they had relied on before. We also saw people who were plunged into immediate financial and physical crises, housing, food, employment, without the city and state systems hadn't really caught up to support people yet. And we saw people just, isolated, stressed, and many people having mental health symptoms for the first time, who didn't recognize these feelings and these experiences they were having. And so it's been a privilege to support Chicago this year, and we're excited to be part of the Call Time initiative. We're excited to be the mental health resource for Chicagoans and certainly for theater workers and members of the arts community who are particularly impacted this year by all that's going on.
Thank you, Rachel. We're so excited that you've jumped in with us. Deb Clapp, Executive Director of the League of Chicago Theaters. Hello, Deb. Great to see you. Maybe you could frame up what's going on right now in theater industry and talk a little bit about your excitement for this program.
Yeah, nothing's going on. That's the whole problem. It remains an extraordinarily difficult time for everyone in the industry. So many people who are out of work, most especially all of the artists, and we talked in the beginning, everyone was it was like so sudden, everyone was kind of thrown out of work. And I don't know what's worse, because now 10 months later, so many people are still out of work and unable to do what they do, what they've dedicated their lives to doing. So it's an extraordinarily difficult time, but I have seen so much creativity and so much resilience coming out of what is, just so terrible for so many people. And I am so happy that the League is able to be a part of this initiative, this call time initiative, because I think it's so important that people are able to seek out help with the help from Season of Concern and help from NAMI, that people know that there are resources out there that they can access for their mental health. And that, I really feel like all of us at some time or another, and especially now, have needed to reach out for help from somewhere. And it's just so important that this is available to them. And I also want to mention that the League still has a relief fund. It's the Chicago Theater Workers Relief Fund. And you can find it on our website at chicagoplays.com. Or it might be .org, I'm so sorry. But anyways, and that is, those are grants of $500 for Chicago theater workers who have either have not been able to find work or were, had to be let go for any reason. That fund is available, and we still do have funds available. And a huge shout out to the Chicago theater community and all of our donors who continue to make gifts to this fund. If there's anything good that has come out of all of this, I'll tell you, we at the League are constantly inspired by all of the giving that has gone into this fund.
Well, Deb, the Chicago theater community is so lucky to have you in the position that you're in right now. Steve knows what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
And the more I learn about Season of Concern, the more I realize it's kind of like a theatrical superhero collective that's come together. It's like angel superheroes. Steve, tell us about.
I think we've just found our brand. Thank you very much.
You can take it and run with it.
Believe me, we will. Season of Concern, interestingly, was founded during another pandemic, the AIDS pandemic of the 1980s, and was founded primarily to give some assistance to people suffering with AIDS in the theater community. Since then, we still fund a number of AIDS causes and AIDS organizations and individuals, but we have kind of expanded our parameters to include literally any health condition that a member of our community may have that means that they need some financial assistance. And I don't think it's ever been more crucial than it is now. As Deb, I agree with Deb. I am incredibly proud of our industry. As I mourn for our industry, I have seen incredible creativity in these little boxes on Zoom, if nothing else. But it doesn't take the place of being together. And I think one of the great maladies, I mean, aside from the practical things, people in the theater community can't ply their craft as they have before, but a lot of people also had day jobs in industries that have been eliminated, especially the restaurant industry. So we have a number of people who literally have nowhere to turn. Add to that the loneliness factor. Theater artists love working together. One of the reasons we were all attracted to the theater was that so we could be in a room with people, all different kinds of people that we could learn about, work with, collaborate with, and create something that was special to us and hopefully special to the audiences. And I think that has been the most devastating thing. I am unfortunately an inveterate Facebook reader, and among all the political posts are posts from people simply saying, I am having a terrible day. What do I do? I don't know who to call. I don't know who to talk to. And this new initiative, I think, begins to address all of that. So I would invite anybody who is having any concerns, especially mental health concerns, and feels that they need to talk to somebody, to check the Season of Concern website and the League of Chicago Theater's website for a lot of ideas of who to call, where to go, and then come to Season of Concern for some assistance, because people are poor. Theater artists are always poor, but we're poorer now, and we are here to give you assistance, to give you aid, to help the members of our theater family. And indeed, our community is a family. That's what makes Chicago theater unique on stage, and it makes Chicago theater unique off stage. So visit www.seasonofconcern.org, and you will you can check out the Biscotto Miller Fund, named after two of our compatriots who passed away during the AIDS epidemic. And look at the application procedures, which are very simple. We've recently revamped them so they're even simpler. And this is open to anyone who works in the theater, union, non-union, on stage, off stage. We're here to help, and we really want you to come see us and use us in the midst of this. And hopefully a year from now, we can all look back on this and say, we did our best and we saved some people, which is what we're all here to do.
Kristina, can you reflect on that a little bit and maybe even talk a little bit about moving past the stigma of mental illness and the reality that we're all dealing with stress and anxiety and depression right now? And when do you know it's the kind of depression that you need to pick up a phone and call somebody about?
Sure.
That's 3 or 4 questions in there. Take them however you want.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, so I think that what's happened, and all of the people that spoke before me kind of indicated the same thing. We've entered this collective trauma and collective grief state, and it's across the whole world. And so all of us are dealing with some sort of traumatic stress or some sort of loneliness, isolation, depression, despair, those sorts of things in the midst of just trying to get by. And I'm sure, Rachel, you can speak to the fact that making a call to get help is a hard thing under regular, normal circumstances. When you to call a therapist or to call a group to make an appointment to go participate in something where you're really, in a sense, vulnerable. You're showing that, or you're admitting that you do need help. And so that's really hard in the first, just under normal circumstances, but with the isolation and not being able to even, connect with people the way that we usually do. Human beings are hardwired for connection. We need that relationship. We need to interact with each other. And over the last 8-9 months, we've had to find these creative ways to engage with people, even people we love. And so I would say, not only for the people who feel like they may be struggling with something, but the people who are friends or relatives or family of people that you think, that person lives by themselves, or that person hasn't worked in the last, 8 months, or that person might be having financial difficulties. You can pick up the phone and call them, and you don't have to solve their problems for them. You don't have to necessarily even say, hey, you should get counseling or you should do this, but just check on them. I had a phone call with a friend of mine just the other day who's in another state, and I called her and I said, hey, I'm just checking on you. And she just was silent. And I said, what's going on? And she said, I just need to cry. And so we sat there for 2 or 3 minutes, and she cried, and I just cried with her. And it's those sorts of connections that kind of open that up. And then we could talk about, what was going on and how, if there was a resolution. But we just need those relational connections with people to be able to get through until things get better. Like you said, Steve, in a year or so when the vaccine has been out and all those sorts of things, and we can get together and hug each other and really, just enjoy each other's time. It's really important that we just call FaceTime if you can, so that you can see the person's face, but we just need to have those conversations.
Marcus, what's on your heart? Oh,
My thing, doing my thing. I was listening to Dr. Peterson speak, and I was really moved by the words of Rachel and Scott and Deb for really calling it out for the kind of isolation that we're experiencing right now. And I just remember this lyric from, I don't know what musical theater it's from, but theater has spoken our truth many, many times about this. And it's people really need people. And the one thing that is going on with this pandemic is that we are isolated from each other. Our best strategy for being healthy is to stay away from the humans. Wow. But in theater, we are the luckiest people because, we have each other in many, many ways. And I'm so thankful for all of the folk that are collecting these resources and bringing us all together. So that's what I'm thinking.
Dr. Peterson, I have a question. I feel like there's so many layers here. And just speaking from personally, I've had my grieving process has been interrupted by new grieving processes. Mm-hmm. What do you do when you're in the middle of a grieving process? I mean, we were all in a grieving process when we lost our industry as we know it. And this thing that we all invested in to have the magic happen in the room where it happens. And then we've started to lose friends and other things. And if you lose somebody, and then 3 weeks later, you lose somebody else, what happens when you stack grieving process?
Mm-hmm. Well, it can get complicated, and I think not only stacking, but we're not used to the way that we have to grieve now. My grandmother passed away just after Thanksgiving, and we couldn't have a memorial service. We couldn't really have, there was very close-knit people who her children could go, but as her grandchild, I couldn't be there in that space and expose everybody else to anything that I may carry there from Chicago. And so not being able to grieve in those ways is, it delays it. So we're all kind of in that this again, collective grief. So we all have those feelings, but we can't really express it in the way that we're used to doing that. And so what do we do? I think more than ever, we have to be able to support each other. My client caseload in terms of grief therapy has skyrocketed. And it's not because people don't, people can't just get through it, but it's hard to navigate it when it's not the way that we've always done it. There is peace and I'm not even sure what word I'm looking for, but there's in that shared experience of grief, there is some solace and some healing that takes place. And it, like I said, it's just being delayed and kind of prolonged and more difficult because of the isolation and because we can't grieve in the way that we normally do.
Steve, how do you think this is going to impact theater? And I'm not talking about the form, I'm talking about the content. What do you think the next 5 to 10 years looks like from playwrights and devisers and theater makers as a reaction to this very unique time in history?
Well, I'm a notoriously bad predictor of anything, but I think what will come out of this, I know what the only other pandemic that I remember, I mean, I was part of the polio generation too, but I remember the AIDS pandemic and what happened to the gay community. It was a horrible thing that we went through. And although we could gather and mourn, which was kind of a lifesaver for a number of us, we came out of that much stronger. We came out of it stronger politically, but we also we put aside a lot of the petty things that tended to separate us and came together and started to understand about the solidarity of the gay community. I think the theater community is already pretty solid, but it's a much larger community now than it was 10 years ago. And when a community grows, there are always factions and things like that. I think what hopefully what this will do is bring us together again and bring us a sense, hopefully, of our own of our gathered strength and our individual strength as we're kind of battling this. So I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of plays about, I mean, there will be plays about protest, as there should be, and there will be plays about striving for equality in all ways. But I think we will have a confidence that we may not have had for a while. And I think we will have a unity that I think we may have lost in the last few years. So I think, interestingly, because we've been doing our jobs on a screen, it has made us think more innovatively about what theater really does and what theater really is, and how theater can be performed in the lack of the performance space or a virtual performance space. So I think we're going to take some of the innovations that we have been discovering in the last 10 months, add that to an increased sense of awareness of each other and wanting to be with each other to create. I think there's going to be a huge kind of mushrooming of activity from the theater community once we can get back together to do all of this. And I'm very excited for that. I mean, I'm excited to see what the three generations of the theater community will do together now. The old people, the baby boomers, the middle-aged people, and the millennials starting to work together now in certain ways and starting to try to understand each other in ways that we may not have thought were necessary before. I know that's kind of what's going on with me internally. And I think it's going to be a greater awareness of how much we mean to each other.
Rachel, can you talk a little bit about NAMI's helpline, the virtual support groups, and any other tips that NAMI likes to share about the foundation of mental wellness? So I like to do 3 or 4 questions at once, and then you just take it, and good thing we have brilliant guests on this show that can handle it.
Ask me about mental health, no problem. So Dr. Peterson, I loved everything that you said about connection and about both making space for connection, but also the importance of finding ways to do that. And, the importance of each of our role in connecting and supporting each other during this time. NAMI Chicago has had a helpline for many, many years. We used to operate it just a few hours a week. In 2018, we went from being just in business hours to being, I think it's 71 hours a week. We're open 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays and 9 to 5 on weekends, which is great. It allows us to serve a lot more people and reach and follow up with people at different hours. But, our helpline was often thought of as a place that people reached out to for connection to vetted resources. We know that, to the point that you made earlier, it takes a lot for people to make the step to reach out for help, whether that's help for themselves, or so often people who call our helpline are actually calling about somebody else. They have somebody in their life, whether that's a family member, a friend, a roommate, who is struggling or something's going on with them. And it might be that they want to get resources for that person, or that they don't even know how to start the conversation. How do I support this person? How do I even ask them if something is wrong? Where do I even begin? And so, it used to be that people reached out primarily, or thought of our helpline primarily at as a space for connection to vetted resources. We, rather than giving you a list of 25 therapists to call, right? You can use us as like a clearinghouse. We'll tell you what you qualify for. We'll tell you, we'll talk you through some things to look for, how to select somebody, all those kind of things. And we still do that. We absolutely do. We do it for mental health. We do it for a lot more because we know often people call us because they're having a tough time, but there's a lot going on under the service. There's mental health stuff, but it could be housing, legal, food insecurity, domestic violence issues. I mean, we really take the time to sit with people on the phone, I suppose. Sit being, all of these words are so metaphorical these days, but sit with people and see what's going on. But in addition to being kind of this clearinghouse, we've seen a huge spike in the amount of calls from people who are really kind of just looking for connection. And that's absolutely okay. Part of that is that it's been harder for people to access, more structured therapy resources. But part of it is that people are very isolated. And, we saw early in the pandemic and really continued throughout this year, the spike of people reaching out and saying things like, I just needed to hear a warm voice right now. I woke up and I felt adrift and I just needed to center and I just need to talk for a few minutes and would that be okay? And so, everyone who picks up the phone, we're a live helpline. You don't get an automated voice. You don't get a voicemail. You don't get a menu of options. The phone is picked up by a mental health professional, whether that's a clinician or we have trained peer support specialists. So these are people living with their own mental health journey who are trained to support others. And we really prioritize kind of that connection, is learning what's going on with you. Sometimes people call with a question, and if I occasionally cover the helpline and take a shift every once in a while, and my first question is usually, well, why don't we back up and why don't you just tell me a little bit more about what's going on? And there's often so much under the surface, and people are just eager to share and eager to be heard. So it's great to have such a flexible resource. We know that we can pivot to mobilize for people according to their needs. And it's been interesting in this time, particularly in this year, not only we never anticipated how important it was going to be to be prepared to provide these kind of services over the phone. That's one of the reasons we think that we got so busy so quickly, is many other providers weren't ready to pivot to doing telehealth, virtual counseling services. We were already a phone line, right? So we had that going for us, but we actually, I just heard this from a colleague the other day, we pivoted by March 18th. It was our first virtual support group. That's how quickly we mobilized to take what we had never done before. They'd always been in person. We went virtual by March 18th, and we went to 3 or 4, sometimes 5 support groups a week. And there's an interesting accessibility factor there too, because we've seen the attendance at our virtual support groups is double what it was in in-person environment, and satisfaction rates and engagement rates are really high. People are really, returning and coming back. And that's both for we have what we call peer support groups. So for people who are having a tough time, who are living with a mental health condition, who are having a mental health experience. And then we also have family and friends support groups. So to go to connect with other people who are also supporting a loved one who's having a tough time. They're all peer-led, so they're not therapy groups. They're really spaces to kind of connect with people who understand you and can relate with your experience. But we realize that being virtual, while there's so much you lose in terms of connection, there's also a lot that you gain. And people who maybe wouldn't have had the transportation or the schedules or the time to join us have been able to reach out this year. And I think for some people it feels easier. Some people even call in, they don't Zoom, they don't feel comfortable doing video into a support group, and it helps them maintain a little bit more of that sense of privacy and individuality. So it's been really interesting to watch. Like I said, it's been a privilege to be able to show up for people this year, but it's been tough, and we've seen as well, just every sector, I think, in the city really kind of trying to figure out what it means to support mental wellness within their work. So that's why it's really cool and interesting to work with, all of you and all the work that you're doing, because I think we're seeing so many different industries in different ways looking around and saying, we have to be accountable and responsible for supporting the people that are in our community. And what's that going to look like? And are we equipped with those tools? And we need some support in doing that. So we've been working with the folks in the restaurant industry, with you guys in theater and other folks in the arts communities, a lot of even corporate workplaces, first responders, all these really diverse communities, just trying to figure out what it means to really show up for each other in such a remarkably difficult time.
I sure hope we can all collectively systematically destigmatize mental illness. Who isn't dealing with it? Nobody gets away with confronting their brain and the chemicals in them and the way traumas pile up on one another. We'll be launching 5 different videos. PSAs that are pushing the resources to call NAMI's helpline, get into a virtual support group, apply to the Boscato Miller Fund, look into the league's financial support. And one of the videos we feature Catherine Miller, and they are a wonderful Chicago casting director and dramaturg. And we showed them in the compilation video at the top of the show. And I love this moment where Catherine, the casting director who's acting in a PSA, they smile while they're asking about a virtual support group. And I could feel that they were proud of themselves for calling. And that's how we should celebrate, hey, I called for help today. That is a courageous, powerful thing to do. And talking to anybody who's usually in a position of power, asking for help is something that you should be proud of.
Yes.
And
I remember Anthony years ago. I was in therapy for 25 years. And what got me there were a series of events that I was trying to kind of push aside, and they were too much. And it took me a long time to have the courage to call somebody. When I finally did and made an appointment, it felt like the weight of everything had been lifted, because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I knew it was going to be hard, but there was somebody else there to listen to me. And I recall that feeling so completely now as I'm thinking back. It's an essential thing. It's essential, and especially now.
Well,
Steve,
in a professional.
I totally get it, Steve. Just this week, myself, but I don't know anybody who's untouched by some level of functioning that goes up and down, no matter how high functioning or professional you might be. There are those moments that we all have. And being on lockdown and taking care of my professional requirements and taking care of my extended generational family, my 3-year-old grandson, proctoring his Zoom pre-K education. Many a times Anthony has called and the staff has called, and we have a meeting at 4:00. I go, I'm fried. Can somebody get me a helpline number, or at least come over and help me? So we all are on the spectrum of some need for support and help, and therapeutic engagement is a beautiful thing. It's a normalized thing. I totally recommend it, like new shoes or brushing your teeth or just being saying hello to the neighbor. It's like that essential. Having that kind of normalized support. And then when we really get into trouble, I'm so glad that we have folks like NAMI and Rachel with your leadership there, and Kristina with your profession. And who knew that the League of Chicago Theaters will be at the vanguard, the forefront of something like this. Deb, what turned you in this direction?
Brought me here, Anthony. Anthony brought me here.
Full disclosure, Marcus is a board of director member of the League of Chicago Theaters. We have many conflicts of interest in a positive way. What's that called? Collaboration of interest.
All intertwined. What really struck me about what you said, Rachel, was the folks who call and just say, I'm feeling unmoored today and I just need like some kind of human connection, I mean, who hasn't felt that, and the same, with Steve, my own therapy journey was a little bit different. I was angry all the time. And when I finally like said, okay, I can't like go through life like this, and called a therapist, same thing. Like I felt so good about myself for finally dealing with it. So I think, it's something, and I don't think I know almost anybody who hasn't at one time or another, just needed some kind of help, even if it's just to reach out and say, I really, I don't feel like I have anyone to talk to about this. Can you talk to me? Amazing.
We could get caught in a loop in our own mind, we can get caught, going over the same thing over and over again. And sometimes you need someone to say, hey, the highway is as wide as you want. You can drive any direction you want. Yeah. And having, for the theater metaphor, having a professional therapist to help is it's like a rehearsal space and a scene partner, a director to go in, I'm going to go into the rehearsal room for 90 minutes and all we're going to do is explore my thoughts and feelings. What a resource.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think the more that we can normalize it in that way, Anthony, you talked a lot about stigma. And I think one of the silver linings maybe of what we've seen is in this year is that because so many people have been struggling, I think there has been so much normalization of just even talking about it, right? And the more that we can normalize that, I think we get to a place where things don't have to be so bad before we reach out for help for the first time. I think, for a long time, no one was getting mental health support unless it was an absolute crisis, right? And that's just not where we want to be as a society. You wouldn't do it, right? You wouldn't wait until you were, on the floor. I mean, if you had all the adequate resources and connection to services, right, in a perfect world, you wouldn't do that, right? And so the more that we see this as being part of taking care of ourselves and being kind to ourselves and just kind of supporting our own journeys, I think that the sooner that we can reach out when we're having a tough day and having a tough time instead of when you've been having a tough time for 5 years, right? And so I think there's that. And Marcus, what you said about, your experience getting to that 4:30 meeting and saying like, I'm zonked. I'm totally wiped right now. I think showing up that authentically is really important. And that's something even in our workplace. I mean, we're all helpers at NAMI Chicago, but we're dealing with our own stuff too. Many of us, including myself, have our own mental health journeys, and we're all dealing with grief and trauma as well. And, making space though to be authentic as a friend, as a leader, as a community member, as a sister or brother, I think really opens the door for those conversations, right? When you're able to show up and say, hey, I'm having a really tough day, or I'm going to need to go talk to my therapist because things are not going well right now. I'm feeling really down from how gray and gloomy it is outside. I'm having trouble getting through the week. I think that really helps destigmatize it for other people too. And it's one of the reasons I think we need to connect with each other because we need that connection, but we also need to show up and be honest about our own journeys because it opens the door for people who are afraid to say that or who haven't had that space to be honest about their experiences. And when you say, I reached out for help because I've been having a really tough time, you open the door for someone to say, maybe I should too.
And the holidays can be a very depressing time. The sun is setting at 3 p.m. and there's also a lot of folks in the theater industry and are used to helping other people. They're the last persons that they even think of. We're going to get wrapping things up here, but I wonder if Dr. Kristina, I hope I can call you that. that's a good TV name for you, Dr. Kristina. If Dr. Kristina could maybe send us with a few thoughts and tips about, getting through this season and being our best to each other and ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, first, let me just make the comment that I think everybody needs a therapist, whether you're struggling or not struggling. The best work I think that I've ever done with clients is when they're not in a crisis.
Yeah.
Because that's when they can really focus on those sorts of things. So I have a therapist. I tell all my students they have to have therapists, and it's just important. But to your question, Anthony, about what we can do to get through the holidays and those sorts of things, again, I would say, connect with people how you can. Do it safely, but connect with, even if it's one other person that you can be in close contact with, have those conversations with, those sorts of things. Make sure that you do that, and then be gentle with yourself and with others in allowing yourself to feel. We are grieving, we are sad, we are there, we have lost a lot, and we're traumatized. And so, maybe you don't bake the 17 dozen cookies and do the cookie exchange for the holidays, or maybe you don't, it's not, the financial, you don't have the financial means to have a cajillion presents under the tree or those sorts of things. And maybe you can't travel to see the people that you love, that you want to be with, and have the big family gatherings. But allow yourself to feel that sadness and that loss and that grief, and connect how you can, and understand that, as the time passes, things will change and things will get better, and reach out for help if you need it. Absolutely.
Thank you all for joining us and partnering with us on this project. And let's make sure everyone knows about these wonderful resources from Season of Concern, NAMI, and the League of Chicago Theaters. And we are crucially connected to one another. I look forward to seeing all of you in person in the very near future.
Yes. Go to collaboration.org for all the call time details, and please remember that we're all dealing with the impact of the pandemic on our mental wellness, and we're encouraging you and me and all the rest of us to get the help we need and to help others. And if you have any questions, you can also just pick up the phone and call the NAMI Helpline at 222-345-9888.
And we'll be back on the third Thursday of every month. And on January 21st, we're going to start the new year by focusing on a new project at Clabber Action called the Family Tree Circle, in which we will be interviewing Chicagoans about their family's lineage, their family tree, and how they've been impacted by systemic racism, negatively or positively. It's a very powerful interview sharing process that we cultivated during Blue Island in the Red Sea. And we are excited to talk about it in January. We also are currently taking submissions for the Light, Clabber Action's Youth Theater Festival, or it might be video, who knows, as well as the Peace Book Festival of 2021, and also a project called Encounter Englewood. And you can go to www.clabberaction.org to learn more about those projects and submit.
Well, thanks again, everybody. Thanks to our guests, to our sponsors. And if you want to see more programming like this, please consider a donation of any amount to collaboration.org or become a monthly contributor for as little as $5 a month. We'd love to get a bunch of those.
And what a great show, Marcus. This is wonderful that we've been able to take the theater out of the theater, put it on a screen, and still collaborate and collaborate. Let's be gentle on each other, on ourselves. Let's forgive ourselves, and not be afraid to pick up the phone and give somebody a ring. I'll call you tomorrow, Marcus. You can count on that.
I'll call you back the next day. We'll just keep back and forth. This is great work, Anthony. So glad to be partnered with you in Collaboration. And thanks all to our guests. And, be blessed. Have a safe holiday. Hope to see everybody back here next year.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you all. Thank you, Emmy and Sarah, for helping run the show, and to all our friends and sponsors, donors, artists, volunteers, and guests. We are connected.
Good night. The double pandemic of COVID-19 and the global protests to dismantle racism and police brutality have forced us all to rethink, redefine, and in some cases, reinvent our lives and livelihood.
I'm Darlene Jackson, and I'm excited to be the new board president of Collaboration. My vision as a leader is to increase Collaboration's impact on the culture of equity and inclusion in Chicago, and to use theater as a tool to build a new future for our city.
It's just a really important time in our country for us to all recognize that systemic racism impacts everyone.
Chicago, our city, is a big inspiration. I'm finding that my life's work is the stories of our city.
I think the one thing we certainly do have in common is that we're trying to introduce a narrative in a time where dialogue has really become next to impossible to have.
With our fists raised, not fighting, but promising the truth of that Constitution and that Declaration.
What's an apology if you keep your ideology, selfish psychology?
It's so easy to say, go get a citizenship, but it's so hard to actually get it.
How do you feel about the fact that your ancestors used to own my ancestors?
What?
Emmett Till, Trayvon Martin, Laquan McDonald, Sandra Bland, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. I can't breathe.
My point is the fact that you're actually here. You're present in this conversation.
Yes.
And you're taking action.
We're signing off for the opening night of the 5th annual Peace Book. These pieces are now into the world. Let's enjoy them. Let's share them. Let's talk about what these artists have stirred up.
So we can bless you some more and send you out with a stronger back. Blackbird, black man, blackbird, black man.
Did you know about me? I didn't. Not completely.
I'm a dancing machine, and I'm an actor with Down syndrome, if that won't stop me.
This past April, precisely on April 18th, I was diagnosed with COVID and I had severe symptoms.
A whole lot of RIPs. This is Lawndale. Just when we all gonna see that we from Lawndale. Way we living just can't be, man. I look just like you when you look just like me.
Learn to shout on top of your lung. Make a scene. Be the troublemaker. Be the trouble.
You can actually feel each of us as we come together, belonging to one another in a house of belonging we call Collaboration.